using Zapier and Google Drive or Docs to set up this automation for meetings. And this overcomes one of the hurdles with meetings, right? They're important. We need to, most people don't live in isolation. And this becomes even more important, I think, if you're the one running the show. You're responsible for getting this done. You could have an assistant set this up, and all I just mean is you're responsible for the communication within your team. All right, and you can help facilitate this by setting up some of these automations and having a centralized place where you can all put your questions, put your comments for upcoming meetings, all that sort of stuff. So basically, you're helping yourself and you're helping your team. And this takes out that tedious part of like, oh, where do I keep all my meeting notes? Is somebody duplicating a document, or are we rewriting, or do we just have one huge document that has everything but isn't, is a real pain in the butt to use? Get rid of all of that. This is a real simple way to do it. So I'm going to switch screens here and we will get into it. Okay, so I'm logged in to my Zapier account, and this is the first step. So it's only 3 steps you need. I am going to assume, however, that you have already created a file. And what I mean by that is, let me show you an example. This would be in a Google Doc. I would create a folder for this, just called something like, weekly meeting folder, whatever you want to call it. But you're going to then create a meeting template doc and just put it in there with something like, this is my example I wrote for this. I have one that's a little bit more complex, but this is the gist. Anything you want to see up here every week, maybe a quick intro line, reminder, could be something about the company, what's your core value, remind yourself about your customers, or what your main meeting goals are, things like that. And then this is important. Put your outline. Let everybody know this is the structure we follow. Obviously, there's a lot of flexibility in this, but if you don't have one, this is a good one to start with. Start with some good news, literally just what's working well, what's been going on. Maybe you've got a lot of stuff to go over, maybe some of it's tough, some of it's good, whatever. Start off on the right foot. Something went right in the last week, so share that and ask other people to get in that habit of doing it as well. Also, reviewing any metrics or your KPIs or key performance indicators. And then discussion time, which is the, whatever you want to call it down here. If you're following traction, that's your IDS topics. But it's basically your main talking points. And then at the end, make sure you close up with a summary or action items. Just make sure everyone's got their action items as they go through here. We might have like create automated meeting system, and that is going to be assigned to Adam, which is me. All right, just make sure that you get some action items out of the meeting. Don't let it go by and then people say, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. Leave that up to you how you decide to do that. All right, so let's get back into here. So the very first thing that we're going to want to do with this is you want to have a trigger, okay? And the trigger in Zapier that I would use for this is that every week at the same time, you want to create a new file, basically. So let's do that. We're going to do the timer. So it is schedule, and you could also find this down below, but we'll use schedule by Zapier. I'm just going to choose first on every week, all right? And then we choose day of the week. This is obviously up to you. I would do this ahead of time of the meeting because Zapier doesn't run to the minute. Also, you probably want people to have time to put their notes on here, right? So generally, I actually have this set up so that it's done very soon after your meeting. So I'm going to make up a time. Let's say your meeting is at Tuesday at noon, all right, for whatever reason. Then probably, let's say it's an hour meeting, maybe 2 hours after that, I would have this created, because the second step of this is going to be notifying the team that it's ready and there's a link available. So what we would do is, let's say again, our meeting's at noon, then we're going to say Tuesday at 2 p.m., so 2 hours after the meeting starts, that we're going to start this. Okay? And if you want to see that, you can just have it check and see what it's actually putting in there. And it needs an action step, okay? But we still need a little bit more information. And the reason we're going to add this, I found that this is a really powerful way to do it, because what we could do is add a step and just say, okay, go ahead and copy the file. But then it gets really complicated when your meeting template, your file from over here doesn't have a date or any organization, because if it just copies it, it's going to just be called the copy, right? Like when you copy in Google Docs. So what we want to do is add the upcoming date of the meeting to the folder, or sorry, to the file itself. So when people go in there, it's really obvious, like, well, okay, this date is the meeting date, so of course that's the right one to use. All right, so let's add another step in here. So we are going to add a step, and we're going to go with date time. All right. So that is a formatter, and then date time is what you're going to select. And this is where we start having fun. We are going to, the transform, you don't need to dive into this, but we're going to add and subtract time. And then we want to go into step 1. And we are going to take the pretty date, okay? And then we're going to add 7 days. Just like that. And then we want to format it to be 4 month, 2 day, and then 4 for the year. Okay, but we don't need the time, so let me do that. Okay, and then from format, we're not going to worry about it because Zapier will be able to figure this out. Okay, great. Finish. Whoops. We need to add a step, and that step is now going to be the actual copying of the file. Okay, so let's go in here, and we are going to use Google Drive for this, and we want to go with less common and copy a file. Okay, click on Save and Continue. I've got my personal account in here. Alright, this is where the fun starts to happen. Now, the file, we could either add a search step, or we can just tell it which one it is, okay? These are up to you, however you want to do this. In my case, I'm just going to use the custom value. And then we're going to use the file ID, all right? If you're not sure how to do it, you can use more here. And then this is where you just want to get the custom ID of the folder itself. I'm not going to go into that. You can read this document right here, which just, yeah, that's going to go into a little bit more detail than we need, but you can read in there and grab it. I want to keep this pretty short. Okay, convert to document, yes. File name, this is now why we use this date time converter up here, because we want to take that, and there you go. That is going to give us the actual date of the meeting and use that as the title. Okay, because now this is where that 7 days came in. We're creating this on the day of the meeting, but it's for the next meeting. And you could do this again. If this was monthly, you would just use 30 days instead, or monthly. You could, obviously 30 days would throw it out of whack depending on how many days in the month. But there's a lot of flexibility to this, but this is great for weekly. Okay, Drive, you don't need to specify this. And then folder, where to put this, you can again, you do the same thing, use a custom value. And then the custom ID for the folder, you just get this from the folder itself, and they tell you how to do all that in there. Okay, so that is the short version of how to do that. So you can follow through with that, and all you need to do is put those custom values for the drive and the folder in there, or sorry, the file. And what that's going to do is start creating that copy, and the title is now going to be the correct date because we added that plus 7 days in there. This is super helpful. So now you no longer ever have to copy that template, and you have a fresh Google Doc for every single meeting. Now, that's neat. It's copied into the folder, so it may be like, ooh, big deal. But the follow-on to this is what you can do with it afterwards, right? Because what you could do is add for example, a Zap or any sort of notification you want to use that when there's a new document in that folder. So like when we copy that folder, or sorry, the file, it's going to be considered a new document. You could create a Zap, for example, that sends out a Slack notification to your team and says, hey team, the next file has been created. Here's the direct link, and here's the link to the folder in case you need to go back and look at other stuff. All the actions you can use for this are huge. You could send an email to your team. Again, we talked about Slack. There's so many ways to tie that in, and so it's up to you, whatever you want. I personally use Slack with my teams, and so this is super handy just to send that out as a notification, like, hey, this is where you can always go. And I also tell them to bookmark the folder so that they can just quickly go in there and add their own notes. So hopefully that's helpful for you. I think if you've never set it up before, you could do this in probably 30 minutes, maybe 45, and this would save you at least 5 to 10, maybe 15 minutes a week. All right, so within less than a month, you're already getting your time back, and then over weeks, months, and years, this saves a ton of time. Makes it really nice. Not only that, that's like the direct time savings, but then the back end is, you're really getting into that process. If you're following the same process for the meetings, everyone's on board with, hey, here's what we're doing, and everyone has that easy to, dump information into during the week so that they're not wondering, I wrote something down on my notepad. Now they've got a place to put it and everyone can see it. So hopefully that's helpful for you. If you have any questions about how to implement that, please just leave a comment or let me know. Thanks for watching. You can stay up to date by subscribing right there. If you'd like to come join our free Facebook group about process, automation, productivity, all that good stuff, you can do that right there. Just answer the few quick questions and you'll be in.